to our chief Washington correspondent, Jon Karl. Jonathan, I've been thinking about some of the conversations that I was having on Capitol Hill with many senators, and there were some senators who didn't want to come out publicly and call on the president to step aside until there was sort of this plan in place on who potentially would step up and become the Democratic nominee. We've been following these movements in real time, this breaking news, the president announcing he's going to step aside. Then we saw that post on social media, the president then endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris, and then it was sort of this silence from some of these statements where they were commending President Biden, but not necessarily jumping to the defense or endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris for the job. Has that changed in the span of the last few minutes?
It's starting to change, Rachel. We're starting to see statements from some key senators that are not only commending Joe Biden for taking the decision, the sacrificing his campaign to get out of a race that they believed he was going to lose, but also endorsing Kamala Harris. Let me just mention a few key ones. Tammy Baldwin, the Democratic senator from the ever so important state of Wisconsin, put out just blanket endorsement today. I'm proud to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris for President of the United States. And then we have the two senators from Virginia, another key state Democrats must hold if they're going to win in November. Tim Kaine, of course, who had been Hillary Clinton's running mate, saying in his statement, I'm looking forward to working with my friend Kamala Harris and a great ticket mate to keep Virginia blue. And the senior senator from the state of Virginia, Mark Warner, putting out his statement, again, praising Joe Biden, saying the nation owes Joe Biden a debt of gratitude. But when he's done with all that, he ends his statement by saying, I believe Vice President Harris has the experience, energy, and resolve to lead our nation. This November, we must defeat Donald Trump and his backwards agenda. Now, in his statement, Warner says that the decision is ultimately up to the DNC delegates, which is just a fact. But all three of those very key senators saying it's Kamala Harris. And I'll add a fourth, since you asked, Elizabeth Warren, of course, who ran herself against Joe Biden in 2020, saying that Vice President Harris is the person who was chosen by the voters to succeed Joe Biden if needed. She can unite our party, take on Donald Trump, and win in November. So you still have some notable individuals, leaders in the party, potential national figures who have not endorsed Kamala Harris or even mentioned her in their statements. But now you are starting to see a bit of a coalescing around the idea that Kamala Harris should be the one on top of the ticket now that Biden is out.
John, you were the very first one to report and break the news that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer had urged President Biden to step aside. How critical will it be for these Democrats to hear from party leaders, as serious voices in this party, like the Clintons, like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Jim Clyburn, even Nancy Pelosi?
Well, I think it's incredibly important. These are the leaders of the party, and I believe what you will see from them is an idea that this process, which is obviously has to be expedited, needs to be orderly. There still is a view among some of those leaders you just mentioned that it's actually best for Kamala Harris, if she is to be ultimately the nominee, or for whoever it is, to have some kind of a process and it not be seen simply as a coronation, a hand and you're the one, Kamala Harris, to have some kind of a process. I would be surprised if there is a serious challenge mounted to Kamala Harris, but they have to go through this. The delegates ultimately have to vote. As we talked about earlier, Rachel, Kamala Harris doesn't have a single delegate right now. I mean, those were Biden delegates. It was Joe Biden that ran in the primaries. It was Joe Biden that got 14 million votes in the Democratic primary. Now, the point that Elizabeth Warren mentioned in her statement is Kamala Harris obviously was chosen by the delegates in 2020, and she won and was elected vice president in November of 2020, voters saying, we're voting for Biden at the top, and we're voting for Kamala Harris to replace Biden if anything should happen to him as president. That's different than this process, which is picking your candidate for the next 4 years. But it's an indication of the strength that she has demonstrated in a national campaign, which none of the other potential candidates we've been talking about have.
Jon, thank you.